So it is 1 o'clock on the East Coast now, and as always, we're going to do our best to start this call on time. Everyone's on mute now, but when the time comes for questions or comments, I'm going to ask you guys to press 1 on your keypad so we can go ahead and unmute you, and we'll know that you have a question or a comment. My name is Ben Guvitz. I'm Associate Director over here at American Promise, and welcome to yet another American Promise Citizen Uprising Core Team call. And this is a call that happens on the second Saturday of every single month at 1 o'clock Eastern. So thanks to all of you that have taken the time out of your busy weekends to join us here today. And if you're going to be listening to the recording afterwards, thank you for listening to the recording. We're honored to have our guest speaker, Congressman Jamie Raskin, here with us today, and wonderful Coach Sam Daly-Harris back to continue our 2-month training on meetings with members of Congress and moving elected officials up the champion scale. And I'm going to pass it over to Jeff Clements, our founder and president at American Promise, here in just a few moments, but just wanted to start with a couple opening remarks. I've been really inspired to see folks stepping up all across the country to start new American Promise associations, or APAs as we call them. And recently we've been working with an incredible group in Santa Fe, New Mexico. A number of you are on this call now. And we had, April 1st, we had roughly 70 New Mexicans in the room during our training when I was out there. And in the last month, we've had, a steady group of 30 or more who have joined the trainings, and I've just been continued to be blown away by this group. They've committed to getting meetings with all 5 members of the New Mexico congressional delegation and are off to just an amazing start. And, they have taken on asking all 5 elected officials if they would partner with them in working to bring Republicans on these resolutions, and realize that if they succeed, it would really be a breakthrough for the entire movement. So there are folks in the groups that, in that group in particular, that have done a lot of this type of grassroots lobbying before, and some folks that were really brand new to this. And watching how each member of the group supports each other in action, no matter how much experience they have, is what makes them so successful, and what will ultimately allow them to develop those strong relationships with their members of Congress, which is so critical in this movement. And so this is the type of action that will really cause the big breakthrough in the 28th Amendment and in the 28th Amendment movement, and it's happening literally all across the country. So thanks to everyone on the call who's already started an American Promise Association or in the process, like folks in Charlottesville, Virginia, or Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Montclair, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Akron, Ohio, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and many, many others. And so I'll also mention, if you are interested in starting a new APA, go ahead and send me an email at beng@americanpromise.net. Once again, it's beng@americanpromise.net. And I'll also be following up with some more information regarding that later on the call. And so as you join these core team calls monthly, we hope that you'll find them inspirational and feel ready to get into action immediately. And the action coming out of these calls is the most important element. And we hope that you'll invite friends to join the calls with you and support each other in action after the call. And so moving on, I'm excited to welcome Jeff Clements to the call, who's going to tell us just a little bit about his most recent trip to D.C. and introduce our very special guest, Congressman Jamie Raskin. And keep in mind, there's going to be a lot of time for some Q&A with the Congressman. So as he's speaking, be thinking about some questions that you want to ask him, and hit 1 on your keypad so we know that you have a question. So as Jeff is speaking and as the Congressman begins to speak, be thinking about questions that you might have for the Congressman, and we'll be sure to call on you. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you, Jeff. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Excuse me. I'm doing great, Ben. Thank you. And thanks to everybody for joining the call, and to Congressman Raskin for being with us today. We're in Boston right now, where we just had an exciting ballot initiative launch event for the Massachusetts 28th Amendment ballot initiative. We're going to be teeing up with hundreds of volunteers signing up to be at the training we did in Boston and this week and next week in Worcester. And so we're seeing the excitement behind this 28th Amendment campaign all over the country. And, but just before I turn it over to Congressman Raskin, I think we all have to remember the hill we're climbing is to get votes in Congress for the 28th Amendment. and they need to be cross-partisan. Amendments require a supermajority in Congress, and the kind of work you all are doing around the country to help bring members of Congress on board, whether Republican or Democrat, are very important. And I think Congressman Raskin can share some strategies and what we might do to help make that possible. But I want to give another big shout out to the folks in New Mexico. I was in D.C. with Bruce Berlin of Santa Fe, and he had helped set up meetings with Senator Udall, Senator Heinrich, Representative Lujan, and others to help talk about why this 28th Amendment to get big money out of politics is so important. So thanks to all of you. And now, without further ado, let me introduce our good friend, champion for democracy reform, Congressman Jamie Raskin from Maryland's 8th District. I first met Jamie when he was a law professor at American University in constitutional law, and it was right after the Citizens United decision. We were talking about the idea of an amendment, and he was on it right away. He was the leader of it. He got it, and he knows the Constitution and the dangers that we face now if we don't win this amendment. And from there, he took the fight to the state Senate in Maryland and helped make Maryland one of 18 states to call for the 28th Amendment. And then in an uphill battle against big money in the campaign against him, running a people's campaign, Jamie was elected to Congress, and he started with a bang, leading the fight for the constitutional amendment as soon as he got there, and helping to build the kind of coalition and power we need both back home and in Congress itself. He's the lead sponsor of the Democracy for All Amendment, a co-sponsor of the We the People Amendment. He's helping to build and unify this movement to win this historic fight. So we're just thrilled to have you here, Congressman Raskin. Thank you so much for taking the time and with all that you have going to be with us today. And let me turn it over to you. And just before I do, the kind of folks you're talking with on this call are what we call our core team leaders. They're people stepping up, and people like Keshav and other high school students in Concord, Massachusetts, who organized and met with their state reps to help push a 28th Amendment forward here in Massachusetts. So I think you'll hear a lot of questions. You'll hear a lot of interest from the group on this call. And once again, thank you so much for being with us, Congressman Raskin, and please take it away.
Jeff, thank you so much. Ben, thank you, and thanks to all the great democracy organizers and patriots on the phone from around the country. It was very moving just to hear people get on the call from all over the United States. Look, these are obviously tough times we're in, and Citizens United is an important ingredient in the difficulties we're experiencing in America today. The decision came down in 2010, and it's just 7 years later, and we're seeing the whole national government dissolve into something like a plutocracy with a cabinet that is made up overwhelmingly of billionaires. It's the wealthiest cabinet in U.S. history. The combined worth of the members of the cabinet is more than the vast majority of countries on Earth have in GDP on an annual basis. And we see a political program that is engineered precisely to harm working middle-class families, to throw 24 million people off of their health care, and to redistribute wealth up the income and wealth ladder. And so the Citizens United has been a really critical part of realigning our politics in a very dangerous way. And of course, this is an old struggle that goes back to the beginning of the Republic. Will we evolve into a more democratic society, living up to the promise that Lincoln articulated and for the people, or will we allow an elite to govern everybody else? And we know that if you read the Constitution through this prism, you can see how we've made extraordinary advances since we began as a slave republic of Christian white male property owners. In the Constitution, we see the record of the abolition of slavery, the establishment of equal protection, the prohibition in the 15th Amendment on race discrimination in voting, the development in the 17th Amendment of direct election of U.S. senators against control directly by the state legislatures, which was a plutocratic form of selection of senators. The 19th Amendment extended voting rights to women. The 23rd Amendment gave people in D.C. the right to vote in presidential elections. The 24th Amendment abolished poll taxes of $1, $1.50, 50 cents, preventing people from voting. And the 26th Amendment established 18 as the federal voting age. All of these amendments are moving towards making America a more democratic society. And obviously the Supreme Court's decision in 2010 took us in the opposite direction. And Justice Kennedy's decision toppled basically 2 centuries of understanding of what a corporation is. And everybody should go back and check out Chief Justice John Marshall's language in the Dartmouth College versus Woodward case from the early 1800s, where he said that a corporation is an artificial entity, invisible, intangible, existing only in contemplation of law and not possessing the constitutional rights of the people. That was standard Supreme Court doctrine for 2 centuries. Even the most conservative justices accepted it, like Justice Byron White, who articulated the basic notion that a corporation receives all kinds of benefits and infrastructural support from the government, like limited liability of the shareholder, perpetual life of the corporation, bankruptcy protection, and so on. And he said the corporation is the creature of the state. The state need not permit its own creation to consume it, to devour it. And, of course, that is what the Supreme Court did in Citizens United. It said that the creature of the state could turn around and use its resources to shape politics and government. And even Chief Justice Rehnquist had strongly taken the view in First National Bank of Boston versus Bellotti that it was well within the power of the states to prohibit corporations and banks from using their corporate treasury wealth to convert into political power. And he pointed out, as many justices have, that the corporation's been in a very useful form for the maximizing of wealth, or the concentrating of capital for the purposes of investment, but that it poses special dangers if it were allowed to cross over into the political realm. So the Citizens United decision just wiped all of that out, and as President Obama correctly predicted in that State of the Union address, which was frowned upon by Justice Alito, this would open the floodgates on corporate spending in our elections, including from foreign sources. And, of course, it has done that. Tens of millions of dollars that we know of in foreign corporate money has come pouring in, and it could be 10 or 50 times that for all we know. After all, a corporation, an American corporation, is just a corporation that's registered here, but the majority of its stock could be owned by foreign nationals or foreign persons. Vladimir Putin could be easily pouring millions or hundreds of millions of dollars into our elections through corporate dark money schemes. We just don't know, and that's one of the huge problems with Citizens United. So, look, it would have been great had the Supreme Court just changed its mind and reversed course, as it has done countless times before on different issues. But I think that the confirmation of Neil Gorsuch itself under the most dubious of circumstances makes it extremely unlikely that we're going to get a Supreme Court anytime soon reversing course on Citizens United, which means that the people have got to take the reins back and pass the 28th Amendment. And so, as Jeff says, we're fighting in Congress to build up two-thirds majorities so we can pass the 28th Amendment and then send it out to the states for ratification by three-quarters of the state. And, people should understand that, a constitutional amendment process should not be counterposed in any way to legislative reforms at the federal level or the state level or the local level. Historically, constitutional amendment movements have become an umbrella for making progressive reforms possible at lots of different levels of government. I mean, the ERA is a great example of that, an amendment we have not yet passed, but of course which we need to pass. But the movement for the ERA created space in the states to pass state equal rights amendments, and many of them did, and also to pass equal pay laws and other anti-gender discrimination laws around the country. And it also moved the consciousness of the Supreme Court to the point where, even though we still need the ERA, we have very strong equal protection jurisprudence norms against gender discrimination. So I don't want anybody to feel like we need to pass the 28th Amendment next year, for example, which obviously would be a tall order given the political configuration in Congress and the states now. But this is a process, and when we get through this extreme outburst of plutocracy and right-wing conservative government in America, I think that the whole public is going to be agitating for the 28th Amendment, and you guys are all setting the table for that and defining the terms of it. And I'm very happy to be here with you at the beginning of this really important movement for constitutional change in America.
Great. Thank you so much, Congressman. Really appreciate it. We know how many requests that you get to participate in these types of calls and appearances, so it really means a lot that you're with us here today. If you're willing to stick with us for just a few more minutes, we'd love to open it up to some questions. There are hundreds of folks on the call, so I apologize if we don't get to everyone's question. But if I call on you, go ahead and ask the Congressman your question, and then we'll move on. But if you do have a question, go ahead and press 1 on your keypad now so I know that you have a question and I can call on you. But we're going to go ahead and start with Craig Clevidence. Craig, where are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from Kalispell, Montana. Thanks for calling on me. And thanks for being there, Congressman Raskin. I would like to ask the Congressman a question. We recently contacted your office with a request to consider the reintroduction of the Constitutional Convention Implementation Act, sponsored in 1985 by Orrin Hatch. Our movement's been divided in strategy from the onset between those who have a legitimate concern that Congress will never adopt for ratification an amendment that dramatically alters their relationship with their donors, and those that seek to utilize a congressional mode of adoption and have a legitimate concern also with establishing a procedure that has no precedent and little guidance. What are your thoughts on that? Have you considered that?
Thanks, Craig.
Thanks so much for your question. I don't know the specific legislation you're referring to, but I'll definitely check it out. But I understand the problem you're talking about. Every constitutional amendment that we've had since Philadelphia is an amendment that was adopted first by Congress, 2/3 vote in bicameral passage, and then sending it out to the states for the states to ratify. And this is the kind of the standard process that's been used. There's also a push to use the other provision in Article 5 to call for a constitutional convention that would just pass a constitutional amendment and send it out to the states from there. There have been lots of, the thing is we shouldn't get into too much of a binary opposition on this thing, because there have been lots of calls for constitutional conventions that have prodded Congress to act. And I think that would be the most likely thing in this instance, that if a lot of states started demanding a constitutional convention just for the purposes of passing an Anti-Citizens United amendment, Congress would move at the point when it hit critical mass, and that would short circuit there actually being a convention. The fears about the convention are, of course, that in this political environment you could get a runaway convention, and there is a move afoot by right-wing conservatives to have a constitutional convention on balanced budget amendment, and I think that's what has aroused people's anxiety and fear about going down the constitutional convention path. And I would just say that those who are talking about a constitutional convention should be extremely clear, both rhetorically but also legally, in everything committed to process on paper, that this is about one issue and one issue only, just so that any calls for such a convention cannot be aggregated and tabulated along with the calls for a balanced budget amendment or a school prayer amendment or what have you. And that's where it gets messy in people's minds. But I think, the important thing now, given the political situation in the country, is to keep people focused on the need to reverse Citizens United and to amend the Constitution. And as the conditions in the country change, we'll be able to make the right calls about how exactly to intervene and when to get votes in Congress, as soon as we start to pull over Republicans and so on.
Thanks. Great question, Craig. Let's go to Anna Bunker. Anna, can you tell us where you're calling in from?
Santa Fe, New Mexico. I want to say thank you to all of you for being here on this call with us. And hi, Senator Raskin, and thank you for taking time on your Saturday to do this. I would like you to just go over a little bit more. I couldn't quite catch everything you were saying about the difference before Citizens United and after, and particularly as it is in regards to foreign money, specifically Putin possibly pouring money into our elections. That's something that I would be very interested in hearing a little bit more about.
Great. Thanks so much. Well, look, even today, we have a ban on corporate contributions to federal candidates for office. This was first enacted in the Tillman Act. I think it was back in 1905 or 1907 that the Tillman Act first banned it. If you believe what Justice Kennedy said, which is that money just pays for speech and the, quote, identity of the speaker is irrelevant, then the Tillman Act has got to be invalidated too. Because why would you discriminate against corporations in giving money directly to U.S. senators and representatives and candidates for president and so on? So the rhetoric of Citizens United is outlandish. And again, if you push it all the way, it would invalidate not just the ban on independent corporate expenditures in our elections, which is what they did, but direct corporate contributions in elections, which a lot of people on the right, like James Bopp, are indeed agitating for. And it would also strike down any ban on direct foreign corporate spending or foreign corporate contributions. After all, people who come to America from abroad are allowed to speak here, and if money is just speech and we don't care about the source of it and the identity of the speaker is irrelevant, then all bets are off. Okay? And that is the road that they're taking us down with Citizens United. Now, the small d democratic understanding has been that corporations are artificial entities. They're set up for economic purposes. They're involved in business, and it's just a confusion of categories to allow them to allow the CEO of a corporation to start writing checks on the company treasury in politics. The reason why McDonald's has hundreds of millions of dollars to give to candidates or to put into campaigns to defeat people or elect people is not because everybody supports the political program of McDonald's. It's because they like French fries. And so these corporations have huge, massive treasuries that are not reflective of people's political sympathies or will, but could be very easily converted or are being converted now into political intervention, into the political process. As to the foreign part of it, an American corporation, a Maryland corporation, for example, in my state, is one that's registered here, but there's no requirement that 100% of the stock or a majority of the stock or indeed any of the stock be owned by Americans. It could be bought out or it could be set up in the first place by foreigners. You see, and so when the Supreme Court says, well, American corporation has all the rights of an American citizen to spend money here, a corporation is just a legal fiction. It's a legal entity. So all of that money could be pouring in from foreign sources, including foreign corporations owned by foreign governments. And so when President Obama warned of this at the first State of the Union address right after Citizens United, the right wing went crazy and said, no, we wouldn't go that far and so on. And the Supreme Court did say it was okay to ban the contributions or spending of foreign nationals in our campaigns, but they don't understand there's a huge corporate loophole that has been opened up by Citizens United, because even though they say, well, we would not let a Frenchman spend money directly in our campaigns, the Frenchman could buy an American corporation or put stock into an American corporation or get influence in an American corporation and influence that corporation to take money out of the Treasury and to put it into politics. And, it will probably take us years to figure out all of the different dark money schemes that have grown up under Citizens United. But the problem is that the nationality or national identity of a corporation is not a clear category the way the citizenship of a person is.
Great question, Anna. I think time for a couple more. Let's go to Gabriella King. Gabriella, where are you calling in from?
I'm calling from Laurel, Maryland, one district away from Congressman Raskin.
Welcome.
And thank you very, very much for the call and for participating and for everything that you do. I have a two-part question. The first part of the question is occasioned by the fact that I often get, quote-unquote, surveys, email surveys, saying, who do you think benefits more from Citizens United, Democrats, Republicans, not sure. And I'm really not sure. And the second part, which might be my ultimate question, is in working across the aisle with Republican members of Congress, what do Republican members of Congress have to gain by this amendment if they're the main beneficiaries of Citizens United?
Great. Let me take that in. Jeff or Ben, whoever's here, if somebody could lower the background noise. I'm hearing stuff in the background, so I'm having a hard time.
Yep. Should have it go now.
So thanks so much for your question, and thanks for calling in from Laurel. So the first question is a great question. Who benefits more from Citizens United, Democrats or Republicans? Well, as a factual or empirical question, the answer's got to be we don't know, because we don't know where all the money is going. And, I mean, that's the problem with the whole dark money system, that the money, it can go from corporations and is dressed up through various, 501c4 or C6 vehicles, and then it's out there. And so we don't know exactly, but the anecdotal evidence I've got is that a lot more of the money is going to Republicans now than Democrats. But the other answer I've got to it is it almost doesn't make any difference, because the question isn't really who benefits. The question is who loses. And I would say that the vast majority of the American people lose when you've got a distortion in our politics and in our public policy, because corporations are able to exert so much influence by threatening candidates or by bolstering candidates. It tilts everything in a corporate direction. And I remember somebody once making the defense of Citizens United, well, they're going to be spending a lot of money for Republicans, but they're going to be spending a lot of money for Democrats too. I mean, I don't know if that's exactly true or not, but if it were true, to me it doesn't make any difference, because it draws the whole political system in a plutocratic direction. And that's what we don't want to happen. We want a political process where elected officials and candidates are liberated from the tyranny of big money, and the rest of the people know that the elected officials are really being loyal and having undivided loyalty to the people rather than to specific special interests or what the founders of the country called factions, small groups that are able to get power and take over the government. And that's a pretty good picture of what's happened in America today. What's happening around the world, you're getting small elites that are capturing governmental control and using government to enrich themselves. And all of these kleptocrats and oligarchs and despots and dictators are finding each other, and they're in league with each other against democratic movements and democratic parties around the world. So I'm sorry, that was your first question. And then the second question, would you refresh my memory? I forgot to.
I think she's on mute now. But just for the sake of time, if it's okay, there are a lot of folks with their hands up, and the congressman has limited time. So if it's okay, I'm going to read one question that was submitted beforehand, as there was dozens, and I want to make sure that we get to at least one of those, and then maybe one more for the congressman. And so Karen Armstrong Cummings asked, and this was a question that was submitted before the call, we have several groups in Kentucky attempting to educate voters about the influence of dark money in our elections. How would you recommend that we communicate with red state voters about this issue?
Well, I mean, again, I think that we need to be linking Citizens United to the general attack on voting rights and democratic norms and the collapse of government into a plutocratic system that serves tiny groups of people. I know Kentucky, it's not a perfect situation in terms of health care, but it has seen dramatic progress and gains under the Affordable Care Act. And we've got small groups in the country that are trying to destroy the Affordable Care Act and throw tens of millions of people off of their health insurance. So I would say that's an immediate short-term battle that is reflective of the big struggle here to return constitutional democracy to an egalitarian vision rather than a plutocratic vision.
Great. Thanks, Congressman. So if it's okay, maybe we'll do one more, Congressman Raskin. Let's go to Philip. Let's go to Philip Hull. Philip, where are you calling in from?
Calling from Oakland, California. Thank you so much for your time, Congressman. I very much appreciate it. I'm in a situation that maybe many of your constituents are in, that I'm wondering whether, with Barbara Lee as my congresswoman in my district, I couldn't ask for a more progressive candidate or one who represents me better. So I'm at a loss as to where I should be best putting my energies to move this process along for the overturn of Citizens United, of the constitutional amendment, because she doesn't need any pushes from me. She's very active.
Yes, indeed, and thanks so much for your call. And Barbara Lee is a great champion of strong democracy and an original co-sponsor of House Resolution 31. Which we introduced right at the beginning of the Congress for a constitutional amendment. But look, the history of constitutional amendments is a history of mass participatory education. I mean, we need to go out and educate the public about the ways in which there are plutocratic designs on all of our institutions, and we need to turn it around and to liberate ourselves from Citizens United and all of the corporate money that's washing around the system. So, I'm encouraging people, especially in your situation, if you've got progressive leaders already, to get involved in educational campaigns to teach people about, Buckley versus Vallejo and Citizens United, and the way that we've got a runaway Supreme Court that has been inscribing constitutional rights and powers into the Constitution, in a Constitution that doesn't mention corporations, and then to educate people and organize people for constitutional change. At the same time, we're organizing people for political self-defense through this tough period.
Yeah, great question, and great lively discussion from all. Very special thanks to you, Congressman Raskin, taking the time for joining us today, and obviously for being such a tireless champion for this strong democracy and historic reform in Washington. And we know you're going to keep up the fight there in D.C. for us. So thanks again for joining, and thanks for all you do.
Well, it's totally my pleasure, and please stay in touch. And anybody who wants to be in touch with me, just go to my website at www.jamieraskin.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Congressman. And we're going to turn it on over now to our great friend Sam Bailey-Harris to continue our great training program and to lead us into what we'll be focusing on in the next couple months, which is grassroots lobbying. And I just want to mention real quick, so Philip's question to the Congressman was a great one, and it's a great lead-in to what Sam's going to be talking about and what we can be doing to partner with our member of Congress to help advance the 28th Amendment, whether our member of Congress is a Democrat, Republican, liberal, progressive, or independent. There's always lots more that we can do to partner with them. For example, helping them and partnering with them to reach across the aisle to find Republican co-sponsors for the 28th Amendment. And Sam's going to talk a little bit more about that now. So I'm going to kick it on over to Sam and let you take it away. Sam, how you doing?
Great. I'm doing great. Thanks, Ben. Yeah, it's almost like Philip's question was a plant. Well, anyway, hi, everyone. It's great to be with you. On our last call last month, I said this, quote, "In the end, this work comes alive most in the context of group support, having people around you who will support each other in getting their letters to the editor written and sent, or support each other in getting the meetings with members of Congress scheduled. So, if you're on for starting an APA with Ben and Joyce's support, write them and let them know at beng@americanpromise.net. And if you're not on for such a big launch, with Ben coming out or Joyce coming out, then just bring a few others together to start a core team on your own. Doing this work with a small or large committed group of others makes a big difference." End of quote from last month. Well, almost to prove my point, the new group in Santa Fe has taken on meeting their entire congressional delegation of 5, and they already have or have had meetings with 2 of the 5. And the brand new group at Concord Academy in Massachusetts met 2 days ago with their state representative, Corey Atkins, who agreed to co-sign an op-ed with them. Now that's like going back to Congressman Raskin's urging us to educate others. She's agreed to co-sign an op-ed with them and join them at a meeting with their member of Congress. So working on a team with Ben and Joyce's support really works. Last month, our focus was on getting a meeting with your member of Congress, state legislator, or their staff. I'd like to hear from anyone else on the call last month who was able to get a meeting or try to get a meeting and feel stuck. So press 1 on your keypad, and when Ben calls on you, give your name and city and go ahead. Is there anyone else who's gotten a meeting with your U.S. or state representative or their staff since last month's call, or has tried and feels stuck? Is there anyone in that category? Press 1 on your keypad, and Ben, let us know if there's anyone in that situation.
Thanks, Sam. No hands up yet, but I'll keep an eye out for it.
Okay, I'm going to wait just 1 more minute, and I want to underscore, because I underscore it every time, being in a group that's working together on this is what matters. Jumping on a call one time, jumping on once a second time is really not what gets it over the finish line. So, Ben, is there anyone who's pushed 1 right now?
Yep, Craig Clevidence has pushed 1.
Yeah, Craig, go ahead. Were you on the call last month where we talked about how to get a meeting with your congressperson or state rep? Go ahead, Craig.
Yes, I was. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
and,
tell us what you're... Go ahead.
The experience I wanted to pass along, I guess, is that we had tried to get in front of Congressman Raskin here our proposal for the Alliance Compromise, which would include the introduction of Constitutional Convention implementation legislation. And I had spoken to his congressional aide, his legislative aide, at the beginning of the week, but unfortunately he wasn't able to get that legislation in front of him. It takes some time. Sometimes, I guess the point I'm trying to get across to everybody is that don't be disappointed. I had thought that we might be able to discuss that legislation with the congressman. I had talked to his representative, but it takes some time for those folks to be able to get in touch with their legislator.
Yeah, but I want to make the distinction. It's way more valuable for, I think it's Montanans, to get in touch with congresspeople in Montana than people in Montana trying to get in touch with congresspeople in Maryland, even though he did extend that invitation. I'm going to move on. Ben, you can remute everyone. If you're up for getting a meet... If you're up, no, I got to go on. I'm not going. The important part of this call is coming up. If you're up for getting a meeting with your U.S. rep or state rep, I urge you to listen to last month's conference call that goes over how to get a meeting with a member of Congress. On this call, I want to practice the big ask, which comes from the fact that out of all the money out of politics bills in Congress, there's only one Republican co-sponsor. So we're asking our members of Congress if they would partner with us in bringing Republicans on the legislation. Of course, we want them to be a co-sponsor themselves, but once they're a co-sponsor, the next big thing after thank you is asking them to partner with you in bringing Republicans on the board. I believe the Santa Fe and Concord Academy APAs are excited about the fact that if they succeed in working with their members of Congress and their friends and relatives to bring Republicans on board, they will have contributed to a breakthrough, not just for the legislation or for American Promise, but for the entire movement. On Friday, Ben sent an action sheet around on getting representatives to co-sponsor the Democracy for All Amendment, and he'll be sending around action sheets in the coming months on getting co-sponsors on the We the People Amendment. So you should have in your inbox all the info you need in the action sheet, including the full text of the Democracy for All Amendment. I urge you to stay on after the call and write your letters to your representatives. There are 101 co-sponsors on the Democracy for All Amendment, all of them Democrats. Now that's not going to cut it. Your member of Congress may be stymied at first. Bring Republicans on board, me? But you want to have a conversation with Democrats in Congress, that would be Barbara Lee, for example, in the Berkeley-Oakland area, about any Republicans on committees they're on or any Republicans they like to work with. Of course, we can't just ask them to do all the heavy lifting. Do we have friends or relatives in other cities and states who care about making a difference and overturning Citizens United, and their member of Congress is a Republican? Are we willing to reach out to our friends or relatives to see if they'd be willing to be coached on this issue and on getting and preparing for a meeting with their member of Congress? Remember, Citizens Climate Lobby, another group that I coach, has played a key role in getting 20 House Republicans to co-sponsor a resolution saying climate change is real and we need public and private solutions. And they played a key role in getting 19 Republicans and 19 Democrats in joining the House Climate Solutions Caucus. If they can have these kinds of breakthroughs, and of course there's more to come, on climate change, we can do it on getting money out of politics. So I'd like to do one role play. I wanted to do two, and we'll only just have time for the one. This one is a conversation with your member of Congress who's a Democrat and a co-sponsor of the amendment, or your member of Congress who's a Republican, about partnering with them to bring Republicans on the legislation or come on board themselves if they're a Republican. And so here's the basic idea of this role play. I'm going to call on someone in a moment. I'm going to throw out some ideas first and then ask for a volunteer to try to role play the conversation. One good strategy is asking questions and listening carefully. Listen for an opening where there could be alignment. So questions like these might be good for a Republican member of Congress, I mean your Republican member of Congress, like, what are your views on Citizens United decision? Or what are your thoughts on the notion that money's speech? If money's speech, does that mean that someone with lots of money has a bigger voice than someone with very little money? If you could do anything to lessen the influence of money in politics, what would you do? Or what does the statement draining the swamp mean to you? Those are questions you could ask, not to create a debate, but to look for openings for alignment. Questions like these might be good for a Democrat member of Congress who's already a co-sponsor, like, have you ever spoken to a Republican colleague about Citizens United? And if so, what did they say? Or what do you think the best approach would be to bring a Republican on board? Or the Democracy for All Amendment has 101 co-sponsors, all Democrats. How much of a problem is that in getting the job done? Or are the Republicans you especially like to work with in Congress? If you were to agree to partner with us in bringing Republicans on board, what's the first thing you would do? So here's the question. I'm looking for someone who's not shy, who would role play, as in practice, a conversation with your Democrat member of or your Republican, whatever you've got, and I'm going to ask Ben to play the role of your member of Congress, and I'll do some coaching. So push 1 on your keypad if you'd be willing to volunteer to do this practice conversation. I will reread those questions. You don't need to ask them all. You probably would only have time for 1 or 2 of them. So Ben will play your congressperson when you do this role-play conversation. This is where the rubber meets the road. These conversations are what's keeping this legislation and this movement from moving forward. Ben, do we have any courageous people who are willing to role-play a conversation with their member of Congress on partnering with them and bringing Republicans on board?
Well, it looks like we have quite a few shy folks.
Ooh.
No one.
Okay.
No one
we only actually
yet,
need
but
1 courageous one. We'll take 150 shy and 1 courageous is all we need.
Like we have Joan DeVore.
Oh, there you go, Joan. Hi, Joan.
Right,
Joan, here's my question.
Oh, hold on just a quick second.
Oh, we got Joan is in New Jersey. I know Joan, actually.
Okay, go ahead. Joan is now on mute.
Okay, Joan, is your member of Congress a Democrat or a Republican?
He is a Democrat.
Okay, great. If you don't mind, I'm going to read. What's the name of your member of Congress?
Donald Norcross.
Okay, so Ben, you're going to be Congressman Norcross, and you're going to respond as best as you can. And Joan, here are some questions you could consider, or you might have some better ones. And which is Congressman Norcross, have you ever spoken with a Republican colleague about Citizens United? And if so, what did they say? Or what do you think would be the best approach to bringing a Republican on board? Or the Democracy for All Amendment has 101 co-sponsors, all Democrats. How much of a problem is that in getting the job done? Are there Republicans you especially like to work with in Congress? Now, Joan, do you know if Norcross is already a co-sponsor of the Democracy for All Amendment?
I'm not sure, but I do know that
go ahead.
At a state level, it went through, the Democracy for All went through the state legislature, and Governor vetoed it, and there wasn't enough votes to override the veto. But I do not know about Norcross.
Okay, great. All you need to do is to Google, don't do that right now, HJRes31 co-sponsors, and there'll be the list of 31 on that.
He is a co-sponsor, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So let's just say you've already introduced yourself and you've told him about what you do in your community, and you've asked him if he would, you're getting to ask him if he'd partner with you in bringing Republicans on board. Why don't you start with a question that might lead to some ideas of an opening where he might be willing to join you in working with you to bring Republicans on board. Go ahead, Ben. You are Congressman Norcross. And Joan, go ahead. Anything you'd want to start with, and I'll be quiet.
Okay. Congressman Norcross, thank you very much.
Nice to meet you, Joan.
It's good. Nice to meet you, too. And I want to thank you for being a co-sponsor of the Citizens United overturning Amendment 28. And I guess my first question would be, as you might know, there are no Republican co-sponsors to this bill. Are there Republicans that you work with that you feel a kinship with and that you sense might be open to considering the elements of this amendment?
Great question, Joan, and thank you for all the work that you've done and for all your help at the grassroots level to encourage this type of historic reform. And so there are, a number of colleagues that I have here in Congress on the Republican side of the aisle who might be amenable to this type of reform. What's really critical is that they understand the issue, and I would certainly encourage, folks at the grassroots level reaching out to them. Because it certainly helps on my end if I'm speaking to one of my colleagues in Congress if they also have support coming from their constituents. So if you knew anyone on the ground that happened to be in a Republican district that was interested in perhaps setting up a meeting with their member of Congress, then perhaps we can approach it that way. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity for partnership in that regard.
Well, actually, there are the next district over is Tom MacArthur's district. I don't know if he's one of the people that you would feel might be amenable to a discussion about this, but there are some people in our group here that are in that legislative district.
Sure. Yeah, and I know Representative MacArthur quite well, and we have a great relationship. And what I would request is if you knew anyone in that district, perhaps we can set up a meeting, and you can ask, Representative MacArthur's constituents if they're able to set up a meeting with him or staff, and perhaps I can join you in that meeting, and we can do it together.
That would be great.
How does that sound?
Yeah, that's definitely doable. I mean, Congressman MacArthur's been getting a hard time from his district, as you might have seen about the healthcare law and other things. On the other hand, the other night he had a very contentious town hall meeting, but he stayed and stuck it out and talked to people. So I think that there's a person there who, is willing to listen to all sides of the story. And
let me interrupt for a moment. Joan, you're doing a great job, and Ben, man, you're a great congressman. Joan, you want to take one moment and coach yourself? Is there something you really love that you did or something you might want to change? Anything about how it was going? And I thought it was basically terrific. But anything that kind of I wished I had done this, or I loved this part of it, I think this is going to work well, or any coaching?
Well, I think what I would do, first of all, I prepare more, but second of all, I think what I would do is try to go a little deeper within his and understand the level of the various issues involved within the amendment that might be more or less contentious with talking to either in his mind or in a Republican's mind. What are the sticking points and what are the sort of more easy concepts to come to a consensus with?
Brilliant. And I interrupted, so you might have had more time to do that, and I just, in the name of time, stopped the role play. I just wanted to let people see that this conversation, Joan with her Democratic member of Congress, or the whole notion that her neighboring congressional district is that of a Republican, and that she has friends that are in that district, and she could work with them for them to set up a meeting with their member of Congress and prepare together. And then Joan mentioned preparing better herself. And that's that action sheet that Ben sent around on Friday to everyone on this call that really has the basic information on this particular amendment that Congressman Raskin's one of the lead sponsors on. And in the future, we'll get other action sheets on the We the People Amendment and the like. The bottom line is it's these conversations with our member of Congress who's a Democrat about their partnering with us and bringing Republicans on, or our member of Congress who's a Republican about coming on themselves and bringing others of their colleagues, or conversations with my college buddy or my friend in another state or my cousin who's in a Republican district, but by their Facebook page I can see really cares about these kinds of issues, and partnering with them in being coached to get them an appointment with their member of Congress. So, Ben, I'm going to turn it back to you with a thank you to Joan, and you'll send around thanks so much, Joan. You'll send around last month's conference call that had the coaching on getting a meeting with your member of Congress, and this month's conference call that had the coaching on the conversation one would have with around the big ask, which is mostly about asking questions, not to start a debate, but to listen, and to listen carefully for any openings for alignment and for work together. That's how citizens' climate lobbies help get 20 Republicans on climate change legislation, which has got to have been as contentious as this might look 2 years ago. So if they can do it, we can do it, and I'm handing it back over to you, Ben.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Sam. And I will be sending that along on Monday, along with a document that has some key ingredients to keep in mind when you are meeting with your member of Congress. Again, those asks that are outlined very clearly, and then a sample agenda that might be helpful as well. And so before we hop off, let's just review some of those next steps on how to get involved with the uprising. And one of the things that we mentioned before is start a new core team or American Promise Association in your community. I'm going to be sending around a short form next week. You'll let me know. You'll click the link and you'll let us know that that's something that you'll be interested in, and we'll reach back out to you and talk through the details on how that's going to work. And so if you don't want to wait until Monday and you're so fired up from the call right now, fantastic. Just shoot me an email, beng@americanpromise.net, and let us know that you'd like a call to figure out how we get more involved and how we get an American Promise Association set up in your community. Number two, let's use these great trainings from Sam and the Citizen Action Center on our website to complete this action before our next call. So the next steps for this action are sending in the request for your meeting with your member of Congress if you haven't done so already, and listen to the recording from last month's call that I'm going to be sending along. Number two, following up by phone after you've sent in that original request if you don't hear from them within a week. Number three, start to gather a few others to practice the meeting agenda and to go to the meeting with you. Number four, do your research on what you want to thank your member of Congress for and whether they are already a co-sponsor of the bill. And then number five, as always, practice, practice, practice. Number six, have a fantastic meeting. And then number seven, having really good follow-up. Follow up any answers to any questions that you couldn't answer during the meeting, and to hear their decision on whether or not they'll co-sponsor on the bill. And I know that I've said a little bit of a mouthful there. That's why I'm going to be sending an email that's going to outline all of these next steps very clearly on Monday. So you'll be seeing that from me on Monday. And just to reiterate, in the email and include the recording on the more in-depth training that Sam did in April on getting the meeting with a member of Congress, and the recording of today's call. Also, there's going to be an RSVP link in the email for the next call that's scheduled for June 10th. That's the second Saturday in June at 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I hope that everyone will not only RSVP for the next call, but please do your best to gather a group of friends, whether it's 3 people or whether it's 7 people or 10 people. Gather a small group of friends to join this call with you so you can stay together afterwards and get into action together afterwards. It'll make these calls much more powerful if you have a group with you that's ready to take action coming off of these calls. So thanks to Congressman Raskin, thanks to Jeff Clements, thanks to Sam Daly Harris, as always, for joining. Thanks to all you for taking the time out of your busy Saturdays to jump on and pitch in to help save democracy. And as always, I'll end with a brief quote. And this is one that we've perhaps said before, but not in a long time. One of our favorites at American Promise. It's a quote from Alex Steffen. And Alex Steffen said, "Optimism is a political act. Those who benefit from the status quo are perfectly happy with a large population of people who think nothing is going to get any better. In fact, these days, cynicism is obedience. What's really radical is being willing to look right at the magnitude and difficulty of the problems we face and still insist that we can solve those problems." And I'll repeat that. Optimism is a political act. Those who benefit from the status quo are perfectly happy with a large population of people who think nothing is going to get any better. In fact, these days, cynicism is obedience. What's really radical is being willing to look right at the magnitude and difficulty of the problems we face and still insist that we can solve those problems. I want to thank everyone on this call for being radical and being willing to look right at the magnitude of the difficulty of the problems we face and insisting that we can solve them. Together we will win, and have a wonderful week. Get into action. Please reach out to me at beng@americanpromise.net with any other questions, and we'll look forward to speaking with everyone soon. Thanks so much. And if you can, I'm going to go ahead and unmute everyone and right now. So let's go ahead and give a couple of shouts and cheers for Sam Daly Harris and Congressman Raskin. I love it. Yay for the 28th Amendment. Talk to everyone soon. Thanks again. Bye-bye.